let's get to the actual arrest report. And I'm gonna get out of here because I gotta get back to work. Okay, here's the actual arrest report. Okay, this is what we have so far. All right, pull this up. All right, it's 5/9/130 17. Man, I hope they don't try him as an adult because he's 17. Okay. Officer Cortez heard over the radio dispatch call out a stabbing call at a stadium. Call notes indicated that an athlete was stabbed. The suspect was reported as being a black male wearing a gray hoodie and blue sweatpants. I immediately left my office and ran across the Staley Middle School parking lot towards the southwest entrance into the stadium. As I entered the stadium, two high school age students informed me that the victim was on the north end of the stadium by the bleachers under a Memorial High School tent. I did not identify these students. Next, I proceeded toward the north end of the stadium. As I got closer to the north end, I could see the Memorial High School tent with multiple individuals under the tent. Once I arrived onto the north side bleachers, an adult male who was on the track pointed out the suspect. I was not able to identify that witness. The individual that was pointed out to me was a black male wearing a gray hooded sweater and dark colored Nike pants. Okay, don't worry. There's more to it. Okay. There's a chain link fence that separated me from the suspect. I gave the suspect instructions to keep his hands in the air during this time. The suspect said verbally out loud, "I was protecting myself." It should be noted that I had not questioned him about the incident. When he made that comment, I asked him if he had any weapons, and he said no. I patted him down for weapons when he was walking along the fence, and I did not locate any on his person. I instructed the male to continue walking along the fence, which he complied towards an area that was an opening in the fence that led on the track. While walking him off the track, the suspect also said he put his hands on me. I then detained the suspect in handcuffed behind his back, had him sit down on the ground. Officer Ricci had arrived on the scene. I conducted another pat down of his person, then searched his person. After he gave me consent, no weapons were located. While the suspect sat on the ground, I advised that I have the alleged suspect. The suspect then responds and says, "I'm not alleged, I did it." Damn, I hate that. Just don't talk, man. I get it, but next, Officer Ricci and I walked the suspect to patrol vehicle, which was on the northeast gate of the stadium. As we were walking to the squad car, the suspect was emotional and said he put his hands on me. I told him not to. I did not question the suspect about the incident. While he was escorted to the patrol vehicle, I searched his person once again, and I had him sit in the back seat area of the patrol vehicle. While the suspect was in the back seat, I noticed fresh blood on his left middle finger. I verbally acknowledged that I saw blood out loud so that it would be captured on my body-worn cam. It should also be noted that the suspect asked me, "Is he going to be okay?" while he was in the back seat. I then identified the suspect. He provided his name and date of birth, verbally known as Karmelo Anthony. I ran through dispatch. Karmelo was then checked via eSchool, confirm his identity, and identifying information to match the individual. Next, I advised Sergeant Holland to transport the subject to Frisco PD. Upon arriving at the jail, Karmelo was escorted into the intake, where I remained with the jail staff the entire time that he was changed over. The clothes that Karmelo was wearing was placed in the FPD paper evidence bag. The clothes remained in my possession from this point on. Okay, until upon Karmelo being placed in the jail cell, I continued to keep possession of his clothes. I returned to my patrol. I drove patrol vehicle to the Sally Port, parked the car, blah 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 blah. Diller took possession of Karmelo's clothes. I added my own body-worn camera to the case. Blah 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 blah. Okay, this is Officer Ricci Allison Ricci. Okay, so she said she confirms what he in his report. Handcuffs. They made a spontaneous stated, "I'm not alleged, I did it." This kid's going to prison. It all depends on how much time. Okay, this kid's going to prison. It just for how long is the question. Okay, so this is everybody's point of view. Sergeant Otis walked up to the visitor bleachers, observed the victim being treated by Frisco Fire Department. The weather began to turn and began to heavily downpour rain. At this time, FIS's staff moved the memorial tent to cover the victim. Sergeant Otis began to use his city-issued phone to snap crime scene photos to preserve as much of the scene as possible due to the weather. A large gathering of people that were involved in the incident. Other officers began to set up a crime scene area with tape, moving non-essential personnel out of the immediate area. Okay, the officers on scene were informed that the knife that was used was tossed and was still believed to be somewhere close. Eventually, one of the witnesses said they remember seeing it on the bleachers still. Officer Showles was able to locate the knife. It was located between rows 9 and 10 near seat 30. The rain began to come down again heavily as it was determined that instead of moving the knife, the officers would cover it up with a large blue tarp. Sergeant Otis assisted in preserving the immediate crime scene as much as possible, while the other personnel tended to the victim eventually transported him. And around the time, Officer Wetzel had the crime scene log and began logging individuals on the call to the best of his abilities. Okay, Sergeant Otis's city-issued phone had a total of 33 photos that were used to document the incident scene. During the download, the initial photos formatting was incompatible with the crime scene folder. He had re-downloaded the photos that he took, and they were able to be saved properly for preservation of evidence. Okay. Yeah, this kid's going to prison. Okay, here we go. Austin and then the suspect, who was later identified as Karmelo Anthony. Anthony was from Centennial High and was sitting under the Memorial High school tent. Austin had told Anthony that he needed to move out from under their team's tent, and Anthony grabbed his bag, opened it, and reached inside and proceeded to tell Austin, "Touch me and see what happens." No one really thought Anthony really had any weapons in his bag, and Austin proceeded to touch Anthony, and then Anthony told Austin to punch him and see what happens. A short time later, Austin grabbed Anthony to tell him to move, and Anthony pulled out what somebody recalled as a black knife and stabbed Austin once in the chest and then ran away. Austin began grabbing his chest and telling everyone to get help. Somebody advised he did not know Anthony's name, but stated another Memorial Track member was friends with Anthony and he could identify Anthony. Somebody described Anthony as a black male, skinny with a possible goatee, short puffy hair, and wearing Centennial High school clothing. This concluded my contact with such and such. Put hands on the kid. Hey, keep your hands to yourself. And I'm not saying you should be not breathing, but keep your hands. You're trying to punk everybody. Everybody ain't scary. You're not gonna be able to punk everybody like this. So now, who taught? So we got to go back to the daddy. So you taught your kids to bully kids, but a lot of parents don't realize their kids are bullies. I know that for a fact. A lot of these kids, when I confront these parents about their children's behavior, there's always, no, my child's being bullied. No, ma'am, your child is the bully. I had to fill out 2 behavioral reports last week on 2 kids, and the parents didn't believe my report. They're like, there's no way that my child did this. And my site lead's like, no, it's the coach said this took place. It's his report. And they were like, no, this can't be right. He must have heard it from somebody. And they're like, ma'am, it happened to him. You know what I'm saying? And then when they find out, and especially they get really crazy when they find out I'm black. They're like, oh, he's a black coach? Because that's another story for another day. Okay. The note stated an athlete had been stabbed in the chest and was unconscious and not breathing. When I arrived, the crime scene already marked off. Suspect was in custody. I began asking these people if they were witnesses. I made contact with Hunter and then somebody else. They were both breathing heavily and crying due to the nature of events. They were with coaches on the field, and it was pouring down rain. We made the decision to relocate to a locker room just to get the East out of the rain. Once in there, things calmed down a little bit. However, they were still hysterical and could not really talk in there. I learned Hunter was the brother of the victim. I attempted to ask them both what had happened. I could not really get anything out of Hunter. But somebody started to speak. I wanted to ask him what happened, and he stated they were all sitting under the bleachers under Memorial High School tent when another male who he did not know walked over and sat under the tent. Then said Austin, the victim, told this male that since he did not go to Memorial, he had to leave the tent. Austin and the male went back and forth, and then Austin stood up and pushed the male to get him out of the tent. Okay, so we got the victim was the aggressor. For me, this is an open and shut case. Reduce the charges to manslaughter and give him 4 years in prison. Okay. Let's continue. Okay. Okay. Wait. Wait. Let me get back to where did I just lost my. Under another male walked over, sat on there. Okay. They're not gonna leave. Okay, went back and forth, stood up and pushed the male to get him out of the tent. Somebody had said during this time of arguing, the male was reaching around in his bag he had. It was at this time the male took out a knife and stabbed Austin and then left the scene. This was all whoever remembered when he talked to me. So he pushed him. He assaulted him. Now, somebody said he reached in his bag and broke his phone. That never took place. Grabbed his leg, went back and forth, stood up. Austin pushed Karmelo, from what it says, several times, and then Karmelo warned him twice. Hey, touch me, see what happens. Punch me, see what happens. And then he dared him, and then he reached in the bag and got the cutting. After this, I then stood by with 3 athletes witnesses until CID arrived to interview them. I was then okay. Yeah, this kid's going to prison, but this is manslaughter. But this is Frisco, Texas, so they're going to make I think they're going to make an example out of this poor kid. I feel bad. They're going to make an example out of this kid, man, just to remind urban folk of their place in Frisco. Okay, let's see. Or the medics reserve evidence. Okay, I told the coach to stick with the student and that he would need to get him to the police station to give a statement. The student quickly informed me that he knew where the suspect threw the knife and pointed me to his location. I located the knife with Sergeant Otis and could see blood on the knife. I quickly used my city-issued phone to take pictures before the rain could wash the blood away. Otis located a blue tarp and we decided we should cover the knife without touching it in an attempt to preserve any evidence. It was windy and raining hard. Okay. Okay. Here we go. Last one. Ambulance, hospital. I arrived prior to the ambulance and waited for them to arrive. They arrived at 10:46 hours with Austin Metcalf, who was brought into the trauma bay for treatment. At 10:53 hours, Dr. Chow pronounced Austin deceased. Once he was pronounced, staff stopped treatment and disconnected cords and tubes from the machines without removing anything from the body itself. While on scene, I took possession of clothing worn by Austin and maintained possession of the items until CSI Dillard took them from me. Okay. At 13:37 hours, nurses from the hospital bagged Austin in a body bag. At 15:15 hours, the transport service for the medical examiner arrived and took possession of the body. Hey, quit putting your hands on people, man. I don't know what else. Don't put your hands on people. Okay, these are all the witnesses. Took their cell phones from them, later turned them over to Sergeant Bissonette. After being relieved, I was asked to make contact with all FSID athletes that had been placed on school buses. Below is a list of students who identified themselves as witnesses to the stabbing of. As long as they just tell the truth, like, hey, he put his hands on him multiple times, he threatened him, whatever the case may be, this should be knocked down to a manslaughter or aggravated something. There's no way this kid should be doing facing first degree murder, because this was not a murder. This was not intentional. This is not intentional. Okay. All right, there it is there. Make of it what you will. Make of it what you will. Make of it what you will.